order, and we'll just wait for, well, if you could keep an eye out for Rainey.
Will
see if we
do.
can get her in.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm calling the December 16th, 2020 Board of Education meeting to order at 7:33. Would everyone please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay, hold on. And
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this point, are there any changes to the agenda? With that, I would say the agenda is approved. There are no minutes to be approved, so we will move on to the next point of order, public participation. Would all board members please lower their hands? And if any members of the public would like to speak, please raise your little blue hand or press star 9, I believe, on the phone. And there is a 2-minute time limit. And Tony, are you there to time?
Yes, I am.
You are, okay. Liz Costa.
Hi, everyone. First of all, happy holidays to everybody. Secondly, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Oh, it's 54 Josiah Lane, by the way. I just want to say thank you to the entire staff, admin, teachers, and everyone at the Tolland Public Schools for what a fantastic job they've done up until now. I'm really appreciative of them trying to keep our kids safe as well as staying safe themselves. So I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday and say thank you for all you've done for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Kristen Marcoux.
Hi, good evening. I would like to say a few things, and I'll just get right to it because I have a 2-minute time. So, as a working parent, I am here tonight representing those that are struggling with at-home learning, specifically in regards to the recent closure of Tolland schools starting next week. The challenge is endless, and 2 minutes really isn't enough time to get into what many of us already know. In the fall, we looked into care for our 2 children during school days and found few options, all of which were expensive. And if I may, breakfast, lunch, and now laptops are all for free of charge. But if working parents want to send their 2 kids to school on a work day and during school hours, it will cost about $800 a month for FRC. It's absurd to pay this amount of money to have my kids go to school and also pay this money to the school system that my tax dollars already pay for. And it makes you think again about school choice. Furthermore, virtual learning is not a successful learning environment. Sorry, currently our 2 children are only virtual on Wednesdays. Wednesdays have been laughable, and I'm sorry to say it in that manner, but there is little meaningful educational time on this day. Every Wednesday, there has been an issue, connection at the school, the staff didn't show up, and the staff was late. Which leaves me to ask what the accountability will be like when every day is remote. And in response, I received back from the superintendent to my email about school closure with safety. He referenced local health departments. But I ask now, what are the numbers? What is the prevalence when compared to other towns? Have these local scientists proven that school is a super spreader? What is the threshold for hybrid? Have we forgot about hybrid? Was that considered? We prepare for the storm
30 seconds.
We prepared for the storm this summer. Masks, face shields, plexiglass in education, hand sanitizing, and social distancing was all properly implemented. If these practices work, which we are told they do, then our leadership needs to consistently reassure staff that they are safe. Teachers are essential workers. They wake up every morning making sure the world keeps turning. And I appreciate everything that they do. And lastly, I'd like to have leadership stop downplaying the numbers. 12 more days is all the kids are missing. to a working parent, that's 4 weeks. But let's not forget the remote Wednesdays that we all have been missed since September. And let's not forget the week and a half that we missed when school didn't start on time. And let's not forget about the 4 months.
Kristen, I'm
the
sorry,
kids
I
missed
have
last
to
first
interrupt
grade.
you. Please send your letter in.
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to give everyone 2 minutes, but thank you for sharing your thoughts. The next, there's no name on this person. There's a phone line, 454. If you unmute your line.
Yeah, it's *9. It's *9. If you need that, it's *9. Christina, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, so for the caller, it's *9 if you need to talk on the phone, or if you we are at the point where we see 454-5173 as a hand raise.
I'll give it a second or two.
If there's anybody here. Okay.
If you can hear us, whoever has their hand raised, that's on the phone. Since if you can't unmute and you don't have the opportunity to speak, I urge you to email the board with whatever you wanted to say tonight. Okay. So right now I'm going to move on to the next point of order, correspondence. So if Tony has the correspondence report.
I do, thank you. All right, we received an email to the board concerning item H4 on today's agenda. Writer questioned how items get queued. An email concerning the decision to put the district in full remote until 15 January. Writer is disappointed in the superintendent's decision. Virtual learning has been challenging for students, parents, and teachers alike. The writer comments that the COVID risk is far less in schools than in virtual learning. Writer also feels that Wednesdays are a waste of valuable learning time. Writer concludes by asking that we all make decisions for the children as if they were our own. An email commending Dr. Willett for his handling of the pandemic in the schools. Writer feels that going to distance learning for the holiday season is the safest option for our school. An email from the parent of a 5-year-old child. Writer feels that the young child will not be getting the amount of instructional time that he is now. The child cannot sit at the screen all day, and remote learning days are minimal compared to normal school. Writer asks if there is a way to provide the youngest students with in-person learning, similar to what was done earlier in the year. An email expressing frustration at the decision to go fully remote. Writer feels that we are changing direction and not giving the process time to work. It appears to the writer that the decision was based on perception and not on data. And an email offering a testimonial of the pandemic from a child's state of mind. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tony. At this point, we're going to move on to points of information. Does anyone on the board just raise your hand if you'd like to address or have any points of information? Christine Griffin?
Thank you. Dr. Willett, just in response to, so sorry, the person who spoke, Kristen, I believe was her first name. I didn't catch her last name. I apologize. Have we considered having K through 5 be able to be in during those 2 weeks? Possibly even the old original 2-day-a-week hybrid or just something like that. I think I can completely understand where she was coming from, that for the younger kids, this is really difficult for them. And I'm just wondering if, based on the data and the science and the numbers, does it make sense to possibly have K through 5 at least be back in for those 2 weeks? Thank you.
Dr. Willett, do you want to answer now or let Renee go?
I can. I mean, we do have a COVID area where I can kind of cover these.
You can cover that there?
I can, if the chairwoman wishes me to, I could just do it there and you can move it along, or I can do it here, whichever is desired.
Let's do it during the COVID action item on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Rini.
Hi. I had two things I wanted to say. The first one is that I'm feeling a little badly that I didn't say anything at the last meeting, but I wanted to just give a quick shout out of support to Sophia around the fact that the communications committee meeting was canceled, and also Chairwoman Plord. Sophia rightly was new to the board, had only been to one board meeting and no communications meetings, and Ms. Plord was ill, and I just felt like it was not great to kind of have them called out for that. So I just wanted to show my support, and I felt bad that I didn't say anything last time that around that. So that was one. And then the second thing sort of dovetails a little bit onto what Ms. Griffin was saying, and that is, I wonder if the board might consider, or if we can consider, at a minimum, maybe in the new year, eliminating the half-day Wednesdays. I mean, I was not for them to begin with, and it's another, if you figure it's roughly 10 weeks or so, it's another 10 days if you figure, say, 20 weeks or something like that. And we're hearing a lot about how, we're going to need extra support because the kids are falling behind and that type of a thing. And I'm wondering why we're doing that. I understand in the beginning of the year, there were technological things and hurdles we had to get over and so forth, but I'm thinking maybe we're past those. And even though Wednesdays are remote, maybe that could be a full day again. So just something that I've been thinking about in hopes to sort of support the students a little bit more in their education. So that was it.
Thank you, Rini. Tony Holt.
Yeah, and I understand that Dr. Willett has a under superintendent's report. He will touch upon the school status and the COVID. But I was wanting a little bit more information on how the district does the contact tracing in relation to the Highland Health District, Eastern Highland Health District. Under the assumption that on 15th January, once we go back, that we'll have to continue that effort to keep our schools open. I'd like just to understand a little bit more about what that takes and the resources required. And then a second, I just wanted to wish one of our board members a happy birthday, Ms. Griffin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone else? I'd just like to thank everyone that has the courage to get up during public participation. I know it's not easy sometimes to fit everything you need to say in the 2 minutes, and I can understand the frustration with young children in remote learning. So we are listening, and I believe Dr. Willett's listening. And so when we go through the agenda, hopefully we can get some more information or, things that give us some positivity for the future. So with that, if anyone else doesn't have anything for points of information, I will move on to the student representatives report. If Alexandra and Simmer are on.
Hi, everyone. We don't have much to say today because we haven't had much time since the last meeting, but Student Council, we're going to be focusing on some virtual community service opportunities during our next 2 weeks that were virtual. And then I think that's really all I have to say. So Simmer.
So this week we just spent getting prepared to go online with our teachers, and also it helps because Tolland High School will not be taking any finals for this semester, so that kind of just eases the stress. So basically that's all we had.
Thank you, ladies. And with that, we will go on to Dr. Willett's superintendent's report. And we'll start with H1, the school status.
Sure. The only thing I'd offer, just a quick question to the chair. Do you want to move Ms. Nuccio up in the agenda here so she's able to do her thing and go to other things, or do you want to kind of leave her where she is? I just wanted to throw it out there.
Tammy, are you on? Do you care if you stay where you are? or do you want to move up?
Whatever is easiest for you guys. I can stay on, or I can move up.
Okay. Let's just go through the agenda. We'll start with H1.
Sure. I just sometimes just wanted to.
Thank you, though, Dr.
Thank
Willis.
you.
I appreciate that. Yes, I appreciate
Sure.
it. A million different things to do now.
Of course. Okay, so this is probably one of the more difficult times of my career has been related to the pandemic. It's been a very complicated situation. I think that people who've been kind of tuning in to my community forums or to these meetings, to other things that we're doing, are aware that, I've generally been arguing for in-person education. I make references to the Connecticut school indicators. I talk about the difference, and I draw the distinction between the Connecticut school indicators and the town level indicators. A few weeks ago, people may recall that Tolland went red, and people were concerned about Tolland being red, but us being in school. And time after time, I've defended the data, and I've talked about where we're at, what we're capable of achieving, and I've published on the superintendent's blog a number of weeks. I keep publishing the Eastern Highland Health District data, and I balance it against our indicators and so on. So I think there's for people that are kind of tuning in, I think that it would be fair to say, and I think people know that even in the emails I've received, I've defended more in-person education, and I continue to do so. So I think it's, I would respectfully ask for those who are, looking at this kind of with concern that I understand, and with strong feelings that I understand, that they kind of look at the history here and the track record of where we've been and what I've been saying. I have also said, even in defending us being an in-person, and I do again believe we need to go back to that. I have said that if I ever reached a point where I felt that it would not be the right thing to do, then I would do that. That I would not stay to a course that would cause problems for us as a community. If I knew that the information in front of me was changing such that it would necessitate it. So this is one of those situations where what's necessary is not always what is popular. And the state of Connecticut has put it on the superintendent's laps to kind of do this for each of their own districts. She or he needs to look at what's happening and then decide how to manage it. And we have many meetings about this. There are many meetings a week where we refer to the DPH and we refer to guidelines and information. I'm on the phone or communicating with the Eastern Highland Health District almost daily at this point, if not multiple times a day. And so, going through that whole process, I have a very, very good sense of where we're at as a district. These 12 days, which are actually, someone pointed out to me, we're really only adding 10 days. So I haven't really been overselling that or whatever. It's actually even less days added than what I've been putting out there, because those Wednesdays are generally remote. So adding those 10 days or 12 days, or however we want to look at it, from that period of December 21st through January 15th, it's generally because of three, a confluence of three major considerations here. One is that DP. I'm sorry, I'm getting my own voice back in my own head, and it's kind of hard. I mean, it must be hard for you to listen to me. It's even harder for me to listen to me. Let me see if I could just. Okay. Can you still hear me? Okay. So it's really a confluence of a number of factors here, but three major ones. One is prevalence. I am making decisions based on the data. I mean, if we take a look at things, the next couple of weeks, one of the biggest things the DPH says is that small groups and family gatherings are a significant source of spread. Currently, we are at our capacity with how we manage this, and we're managing it quite well. But looking at that and looking at the fact that the next couple of weeks will be impacted largely by these kinds of gatherings, it's definitely going to result in additional prevalence that we're going to need to be able to manage. And because of the way that it kind of manifests itself and it appears, sometimes it can appear in groupings. And you've noticed across the state where schools have shut down because of kinds of considerations. If we receive enough people who are COVID positive at one particular time, we will not have time to be able to do all of the necessary tracing, and we will have to shut the schools down. And right now, we are working literally into the night, very late at night, many nights, to try to prevent the schools from shutting down, and we've been successful. We will not be able to do that with additional prevalence. And this particular period of time is highly, highly likely to have that. Maybe more than any other time in the entire COVID pandemic, because if you look at that period from last March through now, the holidays in December are a time of gathering closely together when it's wintertime inside and in, crossing communities and crossing households that we have not yet experienced before. So there's every logical reason to believe that there will be people getting together and that will be at a higher frequency and that it will result in more identifications during this time. So to not look at that and say that was going to be a factor would really be actually caving in to a lot of the pressure. And that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to make sure that we stay the course so we can get back to more in-person learning and actually try to endeavor towards more of in our plan, there is a 5-day, trying to move back in that direction as rapidly as possible. I do expect after these 12 days to move right back into in-person learning at least the 4-day level. And with the next education period, see if we can up that. But I can't do that successfully if we are bouncing all around from identification to identification and struggling with that. In addition, there's many logistical workforce considerations. I know that those aren't always something that everybody sees, say, on the Connecticut State Indicators, but I am doing this every single day and I see them. I know what our capacity is and I know what our vulnerabilities are. And going into this particular period, we are going to be vulnerable to many of those fluctuations. Those can be things like just the logistics, like 14-day mandatory travel quarantines. While people can test out of those, it still takes many, many days in some cases to get the test results back. Even if someone has a cold, it's going to be treated like a COVID-like illness, and they're out mandatory for 10 days. People don't necessarily see the day-to-day functional aspects of this, but to, again, ignore that those dynamics exist would be to basically damn the district to a repeated series of impacts that would be very hard to predict and would likely hit people, in a last-minute kind of way. Within a 12-hour period, we'd have to close schools, or even a shorter period of time because of these kinds of issues. Also, even with, let's say, the CDC's 10-day rule for quarantine, which has not been accepted by Connecticut or DPH, we'd still have people able to come back, say, January 11th, 12th, and 13th. That is well beyond that period of time that we would be able to functionally, be able to plan. So, all of these logistical pieces combined with these rules, combined with the higher prevalence, combined with the COVID-like illness, it just creates a perfect storm of situations. When I talk about a storm, we're in a storm day to day. This is a hurricane. This is a confluence of factors that will make it very difficult to operate in a very predictable, manageable, and safe way. So doing these 12 days this way actually stabilizes us and allows us to proceed in a safe manner. At least people have a forward idea of what is going to happen so they can plan. Our FRCs will be open. We do need to figure out, we do need to provide that clarity and predictability to people. Finally, contact tracing. What's important to understand about contact tracing is that this is a throw a rock in the air, you'll hit someone guilty kind of thing, in that in America, we really have not well funded, this kind of effort. We didn't expect it to happen. This is not a Tolland or Connecticut thing. This is just, we just do not have capacity in many places across the country to do the things that we need to do. And we weren't expecting to be hit with a once in a century pandemic. It was in some people's circles after SARS and so on, but it really was not generally something that money was put into across the entire country. So it's really not any one particular's fault. There is no fault here. So I want to be very, very clear that there's absolutely no fault here. But I also want to give you the understanding that our health district has 80,000 people that it's responsible for. There are 23 different school buildings that fall under that. Right now, there's about 2 to 3 to maybe 5 people who can do that, and that math does not work. It just does not work from the kind of scale we're talking about. So what that means is that school districts have pretty much become a major factor and player in the tracing efforts. And as a district, we will aggressively collect information and go after and do the job that the Department of Public Health and EHHD expects us to do. And when we do get positive cases, I want to thank the community again. It helps us immensely when you report it to us, because we can be very proactive in that case. Waiting till testing centers send information to health districts is a lose-lose game, because it takes days sometimes for that to happen. Once again, I want to reiterate, this is not the health district's fault. It's just the dynamics of the situation. It can be days delayed. So what happens sometimes is that we can get reports that are days old, and many times the school district is already having acted on certain things and sent information to the health district by the time they'll receive official notification from testing centers. The worst case scenario is when no one tells us. Then it takes many days, and we're doing a lot of catch up at that point. So, but the bottom line is that the districts in many places, they just are not going to be able to do that themselves, and it's not their fault. So the school district takes up a very, very large part of that role. And I've been doing that work with this district for some time. I know what this district, and what the numbers are, in a precise form, and I know what our capacity is. And I have talked about that many times. At the beginning of the year, we did not have the capacity to do something, more aggressive. And as we developed that, we moved into more in-person learning, and we've been maintaining that. But I can tell you right now that with the confluence of the prevalence, with the logistics, with the rules, with the tracing, we would not be able to effectively do that in a predictable, safe, manner. Going into the next, say, 12 days or couple of weeks there, the way we're operating now. It would create a lot of fluctuations. It would create some chaotic elements that, generally safety and chaos do not work together. So, it's very important that I did the right thing, not the popular thing. And that does not mean that I do not understand the suffering that ultimately will cause. I do. I just know that, knowing what's coming and being able to plan for it is going to be superior to last minute calls and identifications, emergency trying to find a place for people to go. That tends to create much more vulnerability in families. And it creates even more danger of spread when people have not had a chance to plan for what's coming. And if I thought that I could reasonably manage some of these rules and regulations, if I didn't think it would have reverberating effects, I would do things differently. But I have to work with the rules and regulations I have, not the ones I wish I had. And they have not changed. And even if they do change, take a look at what the CDC is saying about 7 days. That's to test. And it takes sometimes 5 to 10 days to get the test results back. we're lucky if we can get it in a day or two. That is not what happens a lot of times. So, and those of you who have been involved with this know that, especially for the PCRs and that type of thing. So even a 7 becomes a 13. It becomes a 10 or a 12 or a 13. The final thing I want to say, and 10 or 12 days beyond January 1st, for instance, when someone might return, that's right up into the 15th. One final thing I want to say is that these teachers, like many, are working very, very hard. Teachers, staff, all of the staff. And I've heard things that, people say different things. I want to be clear that, these individuals are in classrooms. They are in a room that is not much bigger than, some rooms in the houses in Tolland. And there are 12 to 25 kids in there. 25 human beings, 12 to 25 human beings. There isn't really another career where, say at the middle school level, the exposure to that teacher is 100 different people or 100, kids, 100 humans in a day. No one really is exposed to that. So we're working really hard to make that safe. We're working really hard to make that manageable. And our staff is pulling the weight. They are really good sports. They're making it happen. But I owe it to them and to you to be able to call the ball and say, this is what we can manage. This is pushing the red line. While it would be popular for me to stand up and say that, we're going to get through this and just do it that way, it would not be actually morally correct for me to do that. So at this point, I have defended in-person learning. I intend for us to go back to it, but I also intend to do the morally correct thing here and make sure that we aren't putting ourselves in a circumstance that we really, can't manage, even if we're trying to say that we can. And I think some maybe, other places are willing to do that, but I'm not willing to do that. So that's kind of where we are. From the standpoint of can we go to 5 days? That question came up. That is in our plan. The PCLP plan does have that provision, and I would like to see us get there. I think that has some possibility for February. I think we just have to see how that goes when we get back. The idea of going back to a more hybrid-y form, I don't support that because this is going to be about 12 days of remote. And then hybrid forms of 2-day rotations that flip-flop actually have higher levels of infection and spread. And that is in the data. And if you go looking at the data, I think you'll see that I have been very, very true to the data, have published it, have worked within it, and have advocated for the in-person learning with it. So, I am very data-centered, and we have been following that. So I guess that's at this point what I would say in terms of where we are right now. I think I've been very fair and straightforward. I think I've talked about what we can handle during the typical pandemic situation versus this escalation over the next, say, period of the next few days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And I do believe that this is the right way to do it. I think I owe it to the community. I owe it to the children. I owe it to the staff to do this in the most responsible way that I can. And that's what this is.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Does any board member have questions? Please, Rini and Madhu, are your hands new or old?
Mine's new.
Yours new. Okay, we'll start with Madhu.
Okay. So first, Dr. Willett, I wanted to thank you and your staff and the faculty and staff for everything that they've done. I know this decision wasn't easy. I did have a question because last week, 4 days before the announcement went out, I had asked, was there any data that showed that, school was risky or is that there was community spread in schools? And, we said that there was very little. It seems that right now what we're doing is we're not necessarily looking at current data. We're looking at what could possibly happen in the future and trying to safeguard against that. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, there still is very little spread coming from schools. I think what we're going to see in the next few weeks is it's pretty much what we'd all expect. And again, no stones cast. The December holidays are not about what's happening in schools. They're all about what's happening at home and in the community and with each other. It's more that we have to be prepared to make sure that that does not impact us in a way that's unpredictable and therefore very precarious. So we still, generally schools will have lower prevalence of spread. And that is what I was saying before, and I'm still saying that schools generally are going to have lower prevalence and lower spread than, say, the community is. The next few weeks will be all about the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff McCutcheon, I do see you, but we're past public participation, so I apologize. I'm going to have to ask for you to wait for the next public participation round. Christine Griffin.
Dr. Willett, I'm sorry. I know you mentioned the FRC. Did you say that they will or will not be open during those 2 weeks?
Right now, they will be open.
Okay, so I guess the concern I have there is, especially for the elementary school kids, that so parents can have an option to pay to send their kids to FRC, who will then help them with their remote learning. Is that still the case?
Well, if I were giving out advice, I'd say keep your kids home.
Okay, but
you can't. If you can't, you can't. But there were people that asked to have the FRC, FRC functioning. So I'm trying to provide that service if people need it. What I would say is this, though. It's not so much, again, the prevalence. Their prevalence will be happening in the next 14 days. The infections that are going to happen will be hitting the district somewhere probably around the 10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere in that zone is when people will start seeing the illness impact their families. They'll be able to call their kids out. Whether the FRC is open as a resource or not at that point, is just trying to provide that option for people who need it. But the idea is that, people that are going to be going to different states or interacting in different towns or interacting within their own community in different households, we're going to see that impact coming in. So it's from a standpoint of that kind of information that, we know that when we're doing it without PPE, when people are laughing and engaging in activities that allow those droplets to be spreading around, that is where typically this will happen. And then it typically takes 5, 7, 10 days to manifest itself.
Great. I understand all that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I understand all that. I completely understand where you're coming from and why you feel that, closing the school for the 2 weeks is the answer to help the community. I guess the problem I just am having is I'm concerned about the fact that there are going to be some parents who will not be able to help their kids for those 2 weeks, especially the younger grades, whether we've got people who are essential employees or just, whatever, people are going to have lots of reasons. So I guess I'm just having a little bit of a hard time understanding how those people can send their kids to FRC, but not technically to Birch Grove, and they're going to have to pay for something that they already should get. I guess then my question is, do we have any options for parents who truly cannot keep their kids home, or it will be at the risk of their kids not learning anything for 2 weeks? I guess that's more of my question as far as the FRC.
Yeah, I guess we could just close the FRC. If that was the concern, I certainly would respect that. I would say that I think the FRC generally tries to provide as affordable as possible. I understand the argument of, that, in that situation, we have some element of mixed populations. I think it's a smaller group. It's a smaller setting. I don't know what our full capacity will be. I think in general, what I'm trying to avoid is school closures and entire school closures. So I think that program, with respect to, childcare, what you're identifying is one of the things in this country that needs to be addressed, which is there really isn't sufficient affordable childcare throughout the entire United States. I think that should be taken up by the state and the federal government. Certainly, it becomes a big deal in a pandemic. And I think we're, from this particular standpoint, just trying to make sure that, that that's available was something that people had expressed, some strong feelings about, and I was trying to be respectful of. I don't think whether that's open or not, it's going to actually create the school closures. I think what's going to create the school closures are what I said, Ted, before: the contact tracing, the logistics, the rules and regulations, the small gatherings and the impact of that over the span of the next 7-10 days. So I can respect what you're saying, that this resource is here and people pay for it. I wish there were more free resources or cheaper resources for childcare. That's something we should maybe bring up with the state when we're communicating with them as a board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine and Dr. Willett. Tony.
Yeah, Dr. Willett, just one quick question. I recognize and understand what you're saying about the concerns with the holidays and with the travel. If that's the case, why are we going remote this Monday rather than just waiting until after the holidays?
Well, there are a couple of things that I've seen happening to families. I have some flexibility when we're doing some of this tracing that, sometimes the impacts go back about 48 hours, depending on when someone's symptomatic. So the last in-person day being December 18th means that there's about 6-7 days before the one of the holidays. There are different holidays at this time of year. There is a span of a week or two here that a family might be able to engage in certain things. It was kind of trying to allow for some flexibility if there were infections for people to still have some of that time as a family, while at the same time balancing out as many days in person as we can possibly get. Also, December 21 and 22 are days that, looking into next week, how we functionally have used those, they look like we would be able to do them remotely and still get, the same general amount of function out of them as we might in person, given the time of year and the kind of things that we typically would be doing. So it's trying to find a good balance between some of the other districts that I know went out earlier and are going back earlier. I see no point in going back earlier when we know what the prevalence is, and we know what the number of days for infection to show up is, and we know what the rules and regulations are. So to not do what we're doing, and to say go back earlier in January, we might as well not do it at all. And by not doing it at all, we're going to be plagued by the kind of troubles that I was speaking of before. So choosing the 21st as the first day for remote is trying to find a balance between, providing some proactive protections for families from being hit with, quarantining requirements for their entire vacation period, and pushing schooling out as far as we could, with what would hopefully be a useful period of time for in-person learning. To give you another example, if you look back 48 hours from a COVID positive test identification and someone's had no symptoms, no one quarantines from the 72nd hour from that. But if you had school on the 21st of December and you had a COVID positive identification, every single child that you quarantined would be completely in their room by themselves, most of the time, as per the rules go, isolating, staying in their own, bathroom space and in their own area of the house during their entire holiday. I didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. The other side to that is the CDC has come up with certain exceptions. I do talk to the people and the families about those, but they're not the rules of Connecticut. They're not the rules of the Department of Public Health. So I try to give families options and understandings that would help them navigate that difficult situation, and we'll keep doing that. But it was trying to choose a time that would allow for some flexibility, even in the worst scenario of a person getting stuck in that situation.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Thank you, Tony. Any other board members have any additional questions? Thank you for the explanation. I think everyone, for the most part, knows what an advocate I've been for in-person learning. And I have to give Dr. Willett credit for keeping our kids in school as long as they have been, 4 days a week, moving away from the hybrid model because the data did show that it increased community spread. The data I look at shows that community spread happens in the community. It's not happening in the schools. So if this is what Dr. Willett needs to do to keep our kids in school, get to 5 days a week, then I'm going to have to support that. I see Dana's hand coming up. Dana.
Oh, go ahead and finish whatever you were saying, Christina.
Oh no, you could go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, okay. First of all, I know this isn't points of information, but I just wanted to echo what Ms. Costa said earlier in thanking all the educators and the staff and the administration. And I know, Dr. Willett, you had said that this is probably the most difficult time in your career. I don't think that any decision that you make can make any parent or community member, every parent or community member happy. But a couple of things that I had questions on, and I know that we had talked a little bit about when we were making this calendar or this schedule in the beginning with the Wednesdays, the cleaning days, and keeping those online, but we could revisit that when we revisit the calendar as we go through. I definitely think that that is a great opportunity for us to discuss it. I am concerned with the vernacular of laughable because I guess I would suggest that, if a parent or has a concern with an educator or has a concern with what's going on in the school and it is laughable in their experience, that they reach out to those educators. They've been very responsive. The school offices have been very responsive if there's technical issues and so on and so forth. A lot of the feedback that I've heard is these are great opportunities for remote learners specifically to have one-on-ones with their educators. Some students who are remote learners have had luncheons with their teachers and have sat and had lunch virtually via Zoom or Google Meets. They've brought other children in and had a group lunch together to have a little bit of normalcy for those folks who cannot be in the school. So I think I like the fact that we can keep it as a cleaning day and those kind of things. Again, I want to obviously, as our resident expert, having the most education in person days has been your guidance, Dr. Willett. But obviously we want to make sure we talk about it. But I think we also need to look at the pros that the virtual Wednesdays are giving our students, the remote learners specifically, in addition to the in-person learners. So, but again, please reach out to the schools, please reach out to your principals, please reach out to your assistant principals, your educators, and have them help guide you on those virtual Wednesdays. I know I'm kind of going off of it, but as far as the school status that you're saying with closure is, I guess, another concern that I have about spread in the community, although we haven't seen data of students or young children being the super spreaders. We have to be cognizant of our educators who can be in a risk for exposure, even if a student has it with no symptoms or what have you. We do have educators the educators aren't the children, and they do have different exposures and opportunity to get this virus through an asymptomatic student, no matter how much contact tracing that we do. Again, I'm empathetic and sympathetic to everybody's point of view, stay-at-home parents, educators who are parents, full-time working parents. This is not a good time for anybody. But this is where we need to kind of utilize our resources and get maybe a little bit creative on how we can support each other in the community of Tolland and in the state of Connecticut. So some thoughts, and I just want to throw this out there, and I don't know how Ms. Nuccio is on the call, so maybe she can chime in, but maybe we look at the town with their COVID relief fund or their fund trying to support funding for the FRC or funding at the rec center to assist in daycare opportunities for some of those folks who are struggling, because that is difficult. You're right. Our children are supposed to be in school, and now we're having to find alternate resources, or people are having to find alternate resources. So it can be a monetary hardship. But again, there's nothing about this that's easy. I don't envy you, Dr. Willett, but I do appreciate everything that you and your staff are doing. And I'm sure that we'll make it through this in the end. We just need to work together to figure out what that resolution is for all of Tolland and all of Tolland students. I don't know if there really was a question in there. I do think that we could talk about at a later date the Wednesdays, though, and the calendar itself as we continue to navigate through the pandemic and different things. And one other thing that I wanted to note is some of the data is saying that the end of December could possibly have two of our most deadliest days, the 29th and the 30th, just some projected data that they're talking about. So I just, want to be cognizant that yes, education is important. Yes, it's important. All of our safety and security is important. So it's all important. I don't know if there's one that's more important than the other. We just need to be aware of that. That's all. So thank you, Dr. Wood. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Dana. If no other board members have anything, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, the H2 Coronavirus Fund.
Okay. So the Coronavirus Fund was, as we recall, as we entered the end of last year, there were some phased documents and plans that the Board of Education had made. And as it got to the point of the end of last year, there was a 30-40-30 split. 30% going to the Educational Reserve Fund, 40% going over to the town in the hopes that it could be used for a coronavirus relief fund. And then the other 30% was going to be for the town to sort of offset certain impacts. So essentially that 40% was transferred over to the town, about $283,000. And the town council at the time and also subsequently has pledged to allow those funds to be used for a CRF or a COVID relief fund. I've worked with the town staff to come up with a proposed agreement that would help define the parameters of how those funds would be used and allocated. And so this agenda item H2 represents what we came up with in working together to that end. So if you take a quick look at it, I think it's on everybody's packets. It's also published for those looking at it in the Board of Ed packet. That the town of Tolland, using this fund, contributions are received from the money that we provided as a board in transferring it over at the end of the year. Also, if there are other funds that happen to be made available, such as FEMA, although we didn't receive a lot of money from FEMA, that could also be put into use for this kind of thing. Special appropriations is what we did with that 30-40-30 piece. FEMA is what we may get back. I think at the last time I looked, it was like 6,000 or something. Maybe it will be more as time goes on, but there wasn't a whole lot in FEMA. So anyway, it would get funds from these two sources, and it would, like any other funds, have to be reviewed, and the audit would have to be completed. Also, the town would have the option, as it does with many things, if there's an emergency, it could be used in another way. So that is generally how the money would come into the fund, or is planned, or is in process of being in that fund, and how it can also be appropriated otherwise if needed. The custody of the fund would be much like the Educational Reserve Fund. It would be in the treasury of the town of Tolland, or in the custody of the treasurer. The money may be invested just like the Educational Reserve Fund. It's similar in that language. The income is also similar language to the ERF, so that's kind of a model for this. Use of money from the fund would be for COVID-related activities. The BOE-CRF would be used for non-budgeted COVID-related activities, and those COVID-related activities that exceed the resources that we've had available for them. We are currently in a position where we're at about $183,000 and growing in our COVID expenditures, and this fund would help with those. So generally, it would be able to be used for things that that are running over because of it. The money in the fund would also be something that if there were any grants received or anything like that. That would be something that could be considered with respect to this. In the event that the fund is not required, the town council would agree to transfer the remaining amount into the educational reserve fund, provided we haven't already reached the limit allowed by the town charter. If we reach that limit, then I believe it would be going back into the general fund. And then, item D here, any that remain at the end of each fiscal year shall remain in the fund balance, which is not an atypical practice, but that roughly wraps it up. The figure in its totality is 283,508. That was what was transferred at the end of the last fiscal year. And what I would like to have happen tonight, if possible, is to have the board review it as a first read. If they decided to move it to action, then we would be able to approve and endorse this, and the town council could then pick it up knowing that the Board of Ed had approved and endorsed this agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. At this time, are there any board members that have questions? Madhu and Dana, are your hands up from before, or are those new hands?
Mine is new.
I just took mine down.
Okay. So I'll start with Madhu.
All right, thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. So section A1, where we could use the money, would that be for stuff like hardware, or would this be for stuff that we could reimburse for, like the cost of tutors or supplementing internet for families in need, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to, between the town and us, we would submit a list, and they would review that list to make sure that we agreed that it adhered to what we have agreed to here in this. Generally things that we ran over on or that had not been previously kind of, put in the budget, I would be thinking right now PPE, cleaning materials, things that we're going to be running over on in order to maintain the services that we need. I don't think right now the thought was personnel, although if the board so desires, that's what we're doing here is looking at what you want in there, and then I can go back and talk to the town staff about that. But not as much personnel, but more more items, more physical things that needed to be acquired to successfully navigate this period of time.
Okay, that's fine. That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Murray, you joined us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Christina. So first, it's great to see this document coming together. It's something we've been discussing for a while, and it's nice to see that this important part of our response is in front of us. I have one suggested change, though, for the document. I would like to see some language requiring board approval for the use of the funds, similar to the way that using funds in the Educational Reserve Fund requires some board approval. I think that's a useful model for this document. I'd like to see that continued. And then another side point is I was looking at the agenda for the Board of Education, or for the Town Council meeting next week. And I believe this is on their agenda for that Tuesday meeting to set up a public hearing. So I think that in order for this to get approved, we would need to act quickly upon it, because I know our next meeting is not until January. So I would suggest moving into action once that amendment's made, if people would like to make it. That's all.
Thank you, Jacob. Sophia? Nope, did we lose Sophia?
Sophia, your mic is not is muted.
How about now?
You're good.
Okay, good to go. What's the process by which the Board of Education would get these funds?
We would basically, depending on what Mr. Marie's addition would be, we would reach out to the town with the list of things that we were looking to be provided the funds for, and then the town would provide those funds based on this agreement. If this agreement says that certain things have to happen in order for that to be the case, then we would do that. If it needed to be approved at each time by the town council or the Board of Ed, we would do that. But its design is that once approved, we would be able to present the list as long as it conformed to the agreement, and that would be then transferred. The funds would be then transferred over to the appropriate accounts.
Okay, thank you.
Kind of like the ERF does now, really. But, the capital funds years ago, there was a list, and we adhered to the list, and we didn't do necessarily an item by item approval, but there's a series of ways that can be done. And this particular agreement has us just once agreed to would be able to expend as long as it adhered to what was written here.
And you, Dr. Willett, being the one who knows the most of what our school system needs, would you be suggesting that list to us? Would there be discourse regarding the list?
We can do it a number of different ways. I think the way that this is set up is as long as it adheres to, the use, Section 3 use of monies, as long as it's for non-budgeted COVID-related activities and things that exceed resources, it would be approved by the superintendent of schools. It allows us to act quickly and just use the funds for those purposes, so long as it adheres to this agreement. It would not, as written, require board approval for each iteration. It would be the board approving to this agreement and the town approving to this agreement, and then we would use it, as approved by the superintendent, much like many other expenditures right now in our budget are approved by me. This would so be approved by me, but you can put other things in there if you want. It would just slow it down a bit more than anything else.
Thank you.
The board can also always ask for what those expenses are, and I can report out on those as well.
Thank you, Sophia. Great question. Tony.
First, and I appreciate superintendent, and I assume town manager, working together to put together this draft. I agree in part with Mr. Murray said. I'm concerned with the lack of approval in the document. While I completely understand, I would expect that the list of expenditures would come from the superintendent. I think it's important when we're talking, a special fund like this that's been set aside for this purpose, that it has board approval. To that end, I think this document is important enough that it demands a bit more than let's read and then let's vote perspective on that. If the timing is such that the board has to take action before it goes before the council, then I would recommend that we do a special meeting sometime next week to look at it. But I think we all need time to chew on it and then make our recommended edits. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Rini?
Sorry, I was asleep at the switch there for a second. I just, had been reading through it and agree that under A, in my mind, really, we just need to add approved by the superintendent of schools and the Board of Ed. I like the idea of that similar, cadence of the ERF and, just, us having an opportunity to kind of look at it prior. And as far as either another meeting or doing it tonight, whatever everyone feels is the most comfortable is good for me. So but that was kind of it for me. I just wanted to add that extra kind of layer where the board has an opportunity to weigh in.
Thank you, Rainey. Christine Griffin?
Thank you, Christina. Yeah, I'm just going to say that I agree with what Jacob and Renee and Tony had said. I think just like the ERF, where Dr. Willett brings the specific expense to us and says, I would like to withdraw $142,000 for Chromebooks, for example. I think somewhere in here, the board should approve the list of expenses, because I think it's important to note that one thing that I do not think should come out of here from just discussions we've had in the past is personnel. I think any sort of recurring expense is not what this fund is going to be set up for. So I think that's important to note. So I think it could be just as simple, Dr. Willett, is just, here are, the 7 line items that make up this number, and this is what I'm going to be sending to the town to request come out of the CRF. These acronyms are going to get confusing after a while, but so I agree with Renee that it could just be simple as one line item that we adjust that A1, and then we can move this forward. But I understand where Tony's coming from as well, that if the board would like some more time to kind of go through it, then maybe a special meeting before the town council meeting, when they will be discussing it, might make some sense. So I guess I'm a little ambiguous. I could go either way, if we want to adjust it accordingly tonight, or if we want to wait and do it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Madhu, is that an old hand, or are you raising again?
This is a new hand.
A new hand. All right, you got the floor.
All right, thank you. So I guess my thing with adding that verbiage in there, I mean, typically with an emergency fund, it's to be used for an emergency, and it's not like it wouldn't already be a second set of eyes, because if I was understanding Dr. Willett's explanation correctly, the town itself has to approve before it'll release the funds. It's not like it's sitting in the board for its own, or for their own use. Is my understanding of that correct, Dr. Willett?
Well, I mean, yeah, as written, though, the town and the board, if they come to this agreement as written, it would be that at that point they sort of gave it over, just like the ERF. Once the ERF funds are approved, it really becomes the board's purview as to its use. This would, under this emergency circumstance, come back to, once it's approved under these conditions, the superintendent would then, use it as was needed or as was approved. Typically in our budget process, I do the final approvals on most of the things that come up. And so this would just then fall in line with what we're typically doing for day to day. It just adds that 283 that was earmarked by the Board of Ed for this purpose, sort of back into the board's budget to cover those expenses. And either I can report out to the board on that, or if you want some other way of doing it, obviously we can go with that. But this would allow flexibility to us as written to execute it as quickly and as needed, as long as it did not violate the provisions of this agreement. So no, it would not require council approval beyond approving this agreement. Kind of thing. Okay. Once they agree to it, it would then be ours to use for those purposes under the agreement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It seems like, so you're just asking to be able to have the flexibility, and you would be willing to report back to us what it is that was used from that fund, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it just basically puts it back in our day-to-day operations. It's kind of like how we would normally do expenses, but these would be related specifically to
this fund.
To the COVID related impacts. Yeah, it would just give us that flexibility like we have with the typical budget process. But, again, it it is a unique situation in that they were rolled to the town. The town offered to have some, it was a Board of Ed and Town Council idea. And so we're just banging out the details of that idea.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Dana next because I don't believe she spoke yet on this topic. You there, Dana?
Sorry, it's my earbuds. When I put those in, you guys can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess some of the things that concern me with some of the suggestions or some of the thought is this fund is for emergency purposes, right? So the COVID related activities, which, delaying a decision on this could possibly put people in danger or in harm's way for some of the monetary reasons why we would use these funds for different PPE or what have you within the school system. I do understand why some people some of the suggestions on changing some of the verbiage. I would be concerned putting it that it has to be approved by the BOE, just because that can be a delay in something that might need to be acted upon promptly, where maybe we couldn't have an emergency meeting or meeting around it. I just wouldn't want to have our superintendent or the Board of Education funds to be tied because we couldn't get an emergency through. And then the clarity that when Madhu's question is, it still needs to be approved by the council to flip it through. So there is that check and balance that's there. So I'm apprehensive with adding the Board of Education to A1, although I understand the suggestion. I just feel like that's just putting one more step in the process where we already kind of rolled out what this fund looked like in the very beginning of this and kind of what that process was going to be. And then it has to be brought to the town council, who has to do the approval. So I guess I'm hesitant on putting another step in the process of approval when, our superintendent is. Anyways, I think that's my concern. I don't want to put a delay in it that's unneeded. So I would feel comfortable moving this to action as is and going forward with that.
Thank you, Dana. Christine Griffin, that's a new hand, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So I guess the way I'm looking at this is, Dr. Willett, if this is the agreement between us and the town to set up the fund, similar then to the ERF, is that more of a Board of Ed policy where you bring the expenses to us and we kind of give it the okay, and then we say that that's what we want to use the ERF fund? Because just in response to Dana, now my understanding is we're paying these COVID expenses no matter what. Like, you're paying them as they come in. We can't get around them. It's just a matter of whether we've got to somehow cut something different out of our budget to cover these unexpected expenses, or if we get the money back from the town to kind of cover these so that it doesn't technically have to come out of our existing budget. So it wouldn't hold you up because you're buying whatever we need anyway. Isn't that correct? So yeah. I guess I would just say then, if this is not the correct document to have some sort of Board of Ed oversight, I guess maybe this is a question for Tony, kind of like the ERF. Is there something that then we should have that says Dr. Willett will give us a list of the expenses and just kind of, tell us, and then we can say, okay, that sounds good. I guess that's kind of where what I'm looking at it, how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, the ERF is used as sort of a sake of example so that we can conceptualize. The ERF is really sourced by, a Connecticut 10248A, and then town ordinance, chapter 8. I'm trying to remember, what section, but it's chapter 8 somewhere. Bottom line is, it's kind of a way of referencing how this is done, in that the funds are set aside, they have to go through audit, et cetera, et cetera. But between the board and the town council, you can set this particular thing up however you really want to. You can make it a shall be expended by the superintendent, which just gives us flexibility to be reimbursed for whatever we have. And if there's other things, to be able to spend it, knowing that this money is there. Right now, we're spending what we need to spend, but we really don't know for sure the money's there until we all agree to exactly what that means and how it's going to happen. So, years ago, there was some money done in a similar manner, in that a capital fund was set up and, for the BOE, and then there was a series of projects that were done out of that. There's a number of ways to do it. I think with the timeline and the number of things we're all trying to balance, obviously, any flexibility that's given to me, I ultimately have to report to the board. And so you can demand from me a list of everything that we have listed as an expense and expended it on or reimbursed from. And I report back to you as your employee. And if you're unhappy with any of it, you can find many different ways of handling that. But I think it's just, we're just trying to, in this document between the town and us, looking for making it as flexible as possible, with as little with as little overhead work that we would have to do that we don't already have to do. If we can make it very flexible and it adheres to the agreement, and I have to report back to you on what we did with it, then it just gives us one less thing to do from a procedural point of view in a year full of procedural things that we have to do that we never did before. So I think it's just looking for that flexibility, knowing that ultimately, I work for you, town staff work for the town, and that we would fulfill our duties to do it in a moral, ethical, and appropriate manner, and in a manner such that the board would find acceptable. But again, this is just us working together to get it in front of you, because we wanted to get this moving along, and I think we might not have even spelled monies correctly. No, I apologize if that's not the case. Just looking at it, I realize little things that are bugging me. But anyway, we're just trying to make sure we get it in front of you and get this moved along so we can get it done.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then, I'm okay as long as, I don't want to say we're demanding anything, but as long as I think that we have an understanding that you're going to come back to the board and show us everything that you are planning on kind of submitting to the town for reimbursement, I think that is fine.
Thank you, Christine. Tony.
A couple of thoughts here. One, this oversight that we're, or at least a couple of us are recommending we put in here, it's not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, I think it's a sign of the cooperation between us and the superintendent, that he puts together the list, we take a look at it, we approve it, and then we as the Board of Education hand that to the town. That we're essentially putting our stamp that these are what we want to spend that money on. I'm a little concerned when we start that the town has to approve it anyway, so there's our oversight. That's our responsibility, and it's not something I think that we should hand off to them. If anything, we, the board, should agree that this is how we want to put that money. Now, if our concern with this oversight is from the purpose of expediency, and the time that it would take for us to pull together, and I guess, Christine, to kind of your point there, no, there's nothing in policy that says anything like this fund, this is how it has to be placed together. But what it does say in policy, if you look at 3010, which talks about our budget and our expenditures and those kind of things, essentially there's a line in there, and it doesn't relate specifically to here, but it does say that in the event an emergency precludes waiting for the next regular board meeting for approval, the superintendent will inform the chairperson. Chairperson shall be authorized to act on behalf of the board and shall report this act to the board at the next meeting. So if the necessity is so fast, which I have difficulties believing it would be, but if it is, that we can't afford to get a special meeting in place, our policies already create a precedent for how that can be handled. So the time factor comes out of it, in which case I really see no downside to having that interaction between the superintendent and the board before we spend these monies. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Jacob?
I was going to repeat actually what Christine said about how we have to spend the money anyway, but since she covered that, I'll talk about something else. If we did want to amend this document, and I'm not saying that we will, but if we did, would we do that kind of under an action item, or could we do that up and under H2? I'm just curious from a procedural standpoint when we would do that.
I think you could move this to action and then in your motion, tell me what you wanted changed.
Okay.
It might make for a long motion depending on exactly what those things are, but you could make you could move it to action and then make a motion, to approve this, et cetera, with the adjustment or with the, addendum that, that such and such occur, or that the Board of Ed approves requests prior to the superintendent transferring them to the town, or whatever. You could probably manage it with a sentence or two and achieve that end if so desired.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Dana, is that a new hand?
I took it down.
Thank you, my friend. Okay. So in regards to what everybody discussed, I guess I don't really have a problem with how this is written. I have a problem with if it's presented to the council without us knowing what we're asking for. That to me, I feel like I want to be in the know, not just them. And it's not necessarily oversight. It's more, this is our board. This is our school system. This is, and so it's not a sign of lack of trust. It's more of, this is what's going on and this is what we're presenting to the council and this is what we'd like to advocate for. In terms of the emergency fund, I saw this, I guess, as a relief fund. And I know it's an emergency, but in terms of, Dr. Willett is spending money right now on things that we need because of COVID. Here, Board of Ed, these are those things. I'm going to submit these to the COVID relief fund. Do you approve? Yes. Okay. So I see nothing wrong with having board approval in there. I guess if it's the timeline, if it is an emergency and Tony's the policy that he referenced, keeps the board in the loop on that, then I would be okay with that. I just don't know how you guys would want to amend the wording. Would it just simply be what Rini said before?
Well, you could say motion to approve and endorse the Education COVID Relief Fund agreement between the Board of Ed and the Tolland Town Council with the added provision that funds earmarked for this purpose would first be presented and approved by the board.
I mean, that sounds perfect to me.
I'd be fine with that.
Anybody else?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds good.
Madam Chair, are you looking for a motion here?
I will entertain a motion. Tony, would you like to make it?
I can.
So, Madam Chair, I move to approve and endorse the COVID relief fund agreement between the Board of Education and Tolland Town Council with the added stipulation that funds would be reviewed and approved, or not funds, the added stipulation that items for this fund would be reviewed and approved by the board.
Tony, I hate to interrupt you there. I think we have to move it to action. So I need a motion to move this to action with the amendment. And then when we move it, maybe Dr. Willett can have what he wrote up on the screen and we can make the motion there.
Sure.
So I'll entertain a motion to move it to action.
Jacob Mari, I move item H2, approval of the Education COVID Relief Fund agreement, to action as item K1.
Rini Besaw, second.
Okay, any discussion? Please raise your hand if there's any more discussion. All in favor say aye, any opposed say nay, or you may abstain. I'll do a roll call vote. Dana.
You've thrown me off. Aye.
Rini.
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Madhu.
Aye.
Griffin.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Myself, Christina Plord, is an aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we can move on to the next point of order, H3, the Tolland Middle School partial roof replacement.
All right, so the Tolland Middle School partial roof replacement is eligible at this point for reimbursement. As part of the process, the Board of Ed must certify completion of the project in order for the district to complete the reimbursement paperwork, and therefore this agenda item requests that action of the board. State funds, about 48.3%, will be reimbursed on a $2.4 million project. So it's about $1.1 million that are reimbursed. You can see here $1,159,200. The board action desired is in this case, move to action and then proposed motion. And the motion to certify that project 142-0082RR for the partial roof replacement at Tolland Middle School is complete. By certifying that, it just really allows us to finish the paperwork. This is the meeting minutes from the school building committee for the Tolland Middle School partial roof replacement. And you can see from the meeting minutes that occurred on December 14th that they basically completed the project. And so the individual building committee for this particular project certified that it is complete. And therefore, I am bringing it to you to do that step so that we can then reimburse or get the money that we are owed by the state for the 48.3%.
Perfect. Tony Holt.
Yeah, Dr. Willett, and I know it's on here, you said that these minutes weren't available at the time of the agenda publication, but will this be made available for incorporation into tonight's minutes?
Yeah, or we can post it publicly, anywhere you want. I don't know if we can include something in a packet that already went out, but we can post it with the minutes or alongside it, right, on the website.
Not necessarily in tonight's agenda, but I'd like this document, this supporting information to be with tonight's minutes that show this vote that we're about.
Yep, of
Those
course.
should be together.
Yes,
okay.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Madhu?
Actually, you know what? I'm good. Don't worry about it.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to move this to board action as K2.
Madhu Randu Chantal, I move that we move this action to K2.
Tony Holt, second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye, opposed say nay, or you may abstain. Dana? Dana, you there?
Sorry.
Rini?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Madhu?
Aye.
Christine Griffin?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
And myself, Christina Plord, is an aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. All right, now we can move on to H4, legislative update with Ms. Nuccio. Are you there, Tammy?
Yeah, do you want me to start?
Welcome. Yes, welcome. We'd love for you to start.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you guys. I just, this meeting here, I've been reaching out to all the towns as I get, it's a little weird because with them, it's an introduction. With you guys, you already know me. So, and I'm sure you're all well aware that I am the new representative for the 53rd district, which is Ashford, Tolland, and Wellington. And I have been having meetings with all three towns, their Board of Ed, Planning and Zoning, Town Council in our case, Board of Finance, and Board of Selectmen in the other towns, just so I can kind of hit the ground running. So already doing more than I thought I would be doing and going crazy and learning all kinds of new stuff in that. But it brings me to a kind of a pivotal point where the legislative session starts in January. I'm sworn in on January 6th, and we are jumping right into the budget and coronavirus and all the other stuff that's happening. My committee assignments are finance, bonding, and revenue, insurance, and commerce. So on the finance committee, there's a lot that goes into everything in regards to revenues and payments out and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to do with everybody is kind of have a discussion with all of the different boards to see if you have anything that you need me to be focusing on in this first legislative session. I can't know what I don't know. I definitely feel like I'm more in tune with you guys than with Wellington and Ashford yet. I'm still learning with them. I did meet with Ashford's Board of Ed. We had a great conversation about some stuff that they were looking for and some needs that they had. And I'm already working on those. But with you guys, it's a little weird because I know you guys know me, but I don't want to overstep. And I want to have the conversation with you so you as a board can tell me where you need me to focus in this upcoming session. Where do you need me to fight for you guys? What do you want me to focus on? So it's kind of just an open dialogue right now. Whoever has any questions or anything they want to talk about or any suggestions or anything they need me to look into, I'm all yours. How can I help? Chris, you're on mute.
I know, I'm sorry, I couldn't hit the button. Jacob.
All right. Thank you for coming here tonight, and congratulations. So two things that came immediately to mind, and you might be familiar with them. I'm sure you are. Is the ECS funding. You know, a lot of small towns are really getting hit badly with that, and it's hurting us up on a whole range of things. And also, anything that can help with local autonomy, I think for school districts is a good thing. Obviously, the state has an important role up in education. Constitutionally, it's their job, technically speaking, but I do believe that education is best done at the local level. And those mandates may not work very well for particular towns. And when they're placed up on towns, it means other services are reduced. It's a big burden. And anything that can lighten that burden would be good. One other thing before I yield the floor, I'm just kind of curious in your discussions with the Wellington and Ashford boards of education, did they say anything interesting as far as some of the struggles that you think might also be affecting Tolland that we haven't talked about?
Oddly, some of the things that they definitely mentioned, I haven't met with Wellington yet. I'm getting on theirs, but with Ashford, ECS was definitely a big thing. Trying to get Hartford to understand the significance and how education works in the smaller towns and how what they do affects them. So ECS definitely came up, but we did talk about mandates. And I told them the same thing that I'm going to tell you guys. I've been at meetings and I've been involved in this school system, well, if we want to be honest, since I was 14 years old. So I have heard more times than I can count that mandates are killing us, but I have yet to have anybody be able to sit down and quantify, give me the top 10 mandates that are killing us and how much are we spending on those? And I can fight that. I can take those and bond with other towns and find allies at other schools. One that they had very specific in Ashford was that Ashford and Wellington are both K-8 schools. They were regionalized high schools. So any mandate that they have to look at that affect the higher grades, they still have to do them, even though they're a K-8 school. So that one was definitely more specific to them than it is to us, being a K-12 or pre-K through 12. So theirs were a little different in that. And then they had some local stuff that they wanted me to kind of look into that I'm going to work on. But their big ones were definitely mandate relief, ECS. So some similarities. I think we're going to get anywhere, but they're also going to start looking at the mandates to try to pick like the top 10 that are really bothering them and quantifying what it means to them so we can work on trying to change that. I also, Jacob, I wanted to say, I can't find the person's name right now, but I had a meeting the other day. Oh, I think because I wrote it over on something else with CREC. I met with CREC specifically, and we were talking about the mandates, and he actually put me in touch with somebody else who did a lot of work on mandates and quantifying it. So I'm going to be reaching out to them to see what research has already been done and what numbers exist already, and if there's any other school systems out there that kind of mirror us with the same problems. So working on that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Rini?
Jeez. So I'm sorry I'm having to go after Jacob because this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but so obviously the ECS funding, you already know that, but you know, Tolland is a very high performing school at a relatively low per pupil expenditure. And I have yet to understand why the state believes that taking funding away from a district that is doing well at a lower cost is an answer, so that rather than using a district such as ours as an example and as a roadmap to some of the districts that maybe aren't doing as well at a higher cost. I just feel like it's very punitive and really transfers just so much more burden onto the local taxpayers and creates, unfortunately, divisiveness in the community as we are continually having to drop programs because the cost becomes too high and the tax rate becomes too high, and all of those sort of domino effects around reducing the ECS. So I would really like to advocate for, at a minimum, a slowing. I mean, $300,000 a year is a lot for us to make up, in addition to contractual increases and all of the other things that were just to stay flat. And ultimately, it's eating away at our school system, and it's not right. We are taxpayers to the state as well, and we should have some benefit coming back to our town for that. So, all right, let me stop.
Thank you. I will say too that there has been some talk. There's definitely been some focus on ECS and looking at the formula again, because it is being seen by a lot of the smaller towns as punitive, and the base in which they use it, having it based off of your grand list and the AMI. I know that there's some renewed interest in looking at it, and also we had a call today on legislative issues, and with the extreme deficit that we're going to have, people are worried about whether or not education will be, the ECS credit will be funded 100%. So.
Right. So, and then of course the second thing is the unfunded mandates, and there's many, and I can appreciate what you're saying. Like, give me a list and identify them. I think that's a good, exercise for even us as a Board of Education to understand which ones are really burdensome or the most burdensome to our town. So I think that's a great thing that we can be looking at. I think one other thing that might be helpful is, is there any appetite, and I think it's been bantered around, maybe regionalization of some certain services where the state would then support that in some way. So, for example, some of the busing that goes on to maybe get kids to different areas that they need to be. If we worked up something with some of the towns in our area, could we that would then save the state money as well because we're all working together. And maybe there are some of these things I don't want to get into, putting Dr. Willett on the spot, but if we could come up with some things like that where the state would save money and we could all save money, it's beneficial to everyone. Is there some appetite for bringing something like that forward? So that would be, just a couple things that come to mind off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rini. Madhu?
So thanks. I did just have, I did have the question about ECS, but it's been beaten to death, so I'm not going to rehash that. So one question I did have is there any way that we could maybe have the state set up a fund where school systems across the state could sort of seek reimbursement for COVID-related educational expenses? Like, so, we know that there's children falling behind right now. We know we're going to have to get them caught up. We know that's going to take some staff. Is there any way of appealing to the state legislature to allow towns to reimburse for that?
Thank you for bringing it up at the meeting. I appreciate that. Madhu had actually emailed me about this, and he's not the only person who has asked about trying to find some sort of program working around funding that we get, whether it be federal level or at the state level, to help kids who are falling behind, be it in a summer school program or an after school program or something like that. So it's on my list. My only conversation piece back is the CARES money has to be spent by December 31st. We know that there's supposed to be some sort of secondary package that's coming, although the package that I hear that is coming right now or being kicked around doesn't really have a lot of aid in it for states. It's more business net focused. So, but I would expect that after the first of the year or in sometime in February, there may be talks again of some kind of other package. But from what I just want to make sure I have this right, what we're looking at is some kind of funding related to get kids back up to speed from them falling behind, be it.
Correct. Like exactly like a summer school type thing.
Yeah. Like a summer school type event kind of a thing. Would that be something, Madhu, would you see this as something where people would opt into it, or that it would be something that'd be determined by the teachers? Because I think that would be a little different conversation piece in there.
I think it would be mainly, a conversation between the teacher and the parent based on their recommendation and the willingness of the family to do it. But I mean, that would just be my thought.
Yeah. All right. I think I've got enough, but I may reach out to you more if I need anything else on that, or if you have any other suggestions.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just a quick add-on to that. The district under RTI, SRBI, response to intervention, these terms, these acronyms, I know they're kind of esoteric and hard to understand when we throw them out there, but that process identifies children that are struggling in the general ed population. So one way, if there were going to be funds allocated to the kids that are struggling the most, would be to connect that to the response to intervention SRBI RTI process, because that would be the kids that are struggling the most under these circumstances. That's where they would be identified versus, say, individual teacher recommendation, because that could happen, but that's widely subjective in some cases, not all. But SRBI RTI data and intervention data is not subjective.
So Dr. Willett, I know, just so everybody knows, I'm meeting with Dr. Willett next week too. I've talked to the Ashford superintendent, and eventually we'll hopefully with the Willington also. But so I will also be sitting down to talk to Dr. Willett more in depth. But so Dr. Willett, I think what you're saying there would be key. So honestly, if somebody is in the SRBI or that they were identified through that would be working with a teacher anyway, right? So if a teacher wanted a kid to go to summer school because they were falling behind, they would probably be identified in the SRBI intervention process.
Yeah, there are metrics for that, and it includes the teachers already. So it's an already existing process that could be a feeder to the program that you're talking about.
So from an intervention perspective, since it's going to be designated through an intervention process, would that then kind of lump it under like the special education?
Well, so by design, the RTIS or BI is not special education because it's designed to address student needs before they become
before they get there.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes students have special needs that are well beyond the scope of an RTIS or BI general education approach. But it's meant to historically, it's meant to lower the number of students that are designated as special education by addressing it in the general ed population.
Okay, so then how would we then, and I want to make sure I have enough information here to go forward with this, but how would we then address the kids who have special needs? Because if they're not through the SRBI.
Yeah, they have IEPs. You're going to be addressing them because those are going to be contractual and they're going to be identified in the IEPs. If the state was going to do anything to help out there, they should do an allocation that they find a fair way of distributing to all districts to cover that, because it'll vary from IEP to IEP and student to student, but there will definitely be things that are part of kids' IEPs in the next year that are maybe an extension or escalation of what was there prior, because they need to cover some of the things that did not occur during the pandemic. So that's going to be varied from IEP to IEP, but districts could probably use some relief funds in that way because they are all going to be on the hook for fulfilling these IEPs. And that's for the specifically students of special education, which generally have more legal protections than your average general ed student.
And are they already being able to do summer school? So, or would this be a new thing for them to do summer school?
We in Tolland, we do have a program called it's an extended year. We don't summer school is a term used to define a certain set of things. So
I was going to say, are you going to age me and say it's an 80s term?
I was trying not to say that, Tammy, but you brought it there. So no, it can just mean, it can mean so many things, because it can mean a YMCA summer program. It can mean like a lot of different. So the extended school year, or ESY, is sometimes how students of special education, their programs are defined. It depends on the need of the child, but typically to address it in a series of ways, including an extended school year, would be something that districts could definitely use relief funding for, because there will probably be more students needing that extended school year than there were before.
Right. And just as a side note on that, I have already started to try to have conversations with people about the excess cost funding model and it being funded fully, and actually reviewing what we're using as our base number for that, or the actual, the 75,000, like reviewing the formula for excess costs, because I just think that there's room in there for tweaking.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Sophia has been waiting patiently.
I also was going to point out the IEP situation. I'm sure that many parents whose children are receiving supports through their IEP plan might need more because of so much of the remote learning. Those plans might need to be modified and buttressed, and that's going to be an additional strain on our school system. So perhaps pointing that out to the state, that our special education students may need more, and they probably definitely will need more, and we will need more resources to accommodate those needs. Additionally, I also wanted to echo Reni's point that I like the idea of possibly regionalizing expenses. I was even thinking of health insurance for our teachers, our books, maybe an IT person, curriculum coordinator could be shared amongst the districts. I just think that's an awesome idea, and I had also thought of it, and I think it's something that could be explored. Definitely not suggesting to regionalize our schools, but just the expenses. And congratulations, and I appreciate you speaking with us.
Thank you very much. And yeah, a regionalization of backroom kind of stuff is what I'm kind of hearing you say. We do have a sort of regionalized healthcare. Dr. Willett can actually at another time probably speak pretty in detail to that about the ECHIP program. And actually our ECHIP program, just as a side note, performs substantially better than the state's MERS program. We do not want to get into the state MERS program, which is super highly subsidized and not doing well from a healthcare perspective. The ECHIP plan that we're in, and Dr. Willett, I don't know, are you still the chairman of that? Yeah, like that program that we have, it combines the town and the Board of Ed from multiple towns, and it's a really good program. But for the rest of the back room stuff that you're saying, I agree, and I think kind of the curriculum director for me is like a catch-22, because like Jacob was saying, if you want schools to have more autonomy, it would make sense to have your own curriculum coordinator. But because the state is so dictative on how and what everything is taught, everybody's learning pretty much the same sort of thing. So a curriculum director would be a great position to be able to share amongst a couple of schools if you're standardizing if the standardization of what's being taught. So I wrote that all down. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Christine.
Thank you, Tammy, for coming out and being so proactive.
Happy birthday.
Oh, yes, thank you. My colleagues did an excellent job discussing so many things for you to bring forward. Just one last thing. You had mentioned the CARES Act. I would love for if they do something similar, or if there's another something that comes out specifically to schools, if we could reevaluate exactly how that calculation is done, because I don't think it changed, but I have in my notes here that Tolland got just a lovely $46,000 for that. So
exactly,
it would be great if we could advocate for a little bit more, especially with all the things like we were just talking about with SRBI and special ed and all these needs that we're going to have coming forward. So it'd be really nice if we could take a little more piece of the pie with
I agree.
CARES Act.
I agree. Tolland got the amount that Tolland got was pretty dismal. I don't think that it covered Dr. Willett. I don't even know that it covered a week of what the expenses that we've incurred. It was definitely shocking when I saw that number. So I'd be very interested to know how they come up with it, and then figure out to make sure that, and this was what Ashford was saying, their superintendent, I guess, came from a more city-like area, and now and he said it's amazing. People don't understand how education in small towns, how it functions, and how it's a direct impact on taxes, and it's a direct impact on housing and everything else around it. So I think us little towns kind of get pushed to the wayside, which has always been one of the things that drove me crazy, which has always been one of the things that I said that I will make sure I fight against when I'm there, is that small towns with big mouths. So, I'll do what I can to definitely make sure we are at the forefront of at least asking the questions.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Tammy. If no one has anything else, I think the only thing I would say is I echo what everyone has said here. I think Dr. Willett is probably the expert in any mandate relief. I know it would be time consuming to quantify. I think there was like 380 mandates the last time I looked.
Yeah.
But I guess my ask really is, when you're preparing the budget for us, if there's something that you're putting in there that you feel like, oh, I have to put this in here, but you don't want to, I think that would be low hanging fruit. If that would, you're looking at it anyway in that point, but really right now, I think the mandates are, that will be a work in progress, and we can keep you posted.
Well, yeah, this is something that I think is going to take a little time. And like when I was talking to Crack and a couple other CEA, a couple other of the lobbyists that I've been speaking to in that, the thing is, and I'm sure Dr. Willett can understand and agree with, even back to when he was a teacher, these mandates get passed and the towns just absorb it. they just absorb it. And by absorbing 380 mandates that are unfunded, it takes time away from being able to lesson plan and teach and all of the other stuff. And by no means am I saying, let's go through the 380 and say, this is how much all of these mandates are costing us. But the ones that are the most egregious, the ones that really suck up time, resources, and dollars, just pick those. The ones that we can easily quantify, the ones that, you know, we could see getting rid of. There are a lot of these mandates that are good mandates that we should have. You know, special education is a mandate. There's a lot that are worthy of keeping that you're going to be fine with, but there are some that are just really, we have to, like, again, for Ashford and Wellington, they're K-8. So anything that's has a lap over to high school stuff that they have to do just doesn't impact them. So I know everybody's really busy, and I'm not trying to drain those resources, but I can't fight a battle if I don't have facts. So I'm willing to fight it. I just, whatever we can get from the most egregious ones, the ones that are most offensive, and how we can quantify it. And I saw your list up there, Dr. Willett. If you could send me that, you're going to save me an email to the OLR.
Yep, I'll send you. I had done some work on that. I'll send it to you, Tammy.
Yeah, whenever, or we can talk about it when we meet.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Tammy. If anybody else has any questions or anything else that you want to bring to us, we can.
And I just want to let everybody know, I am trying very hard to keep my town email and stuff like that very separate from the legislative. I will have an email address at the CGA, and January 6th, I will get that. And it's just going to be Tammy Nuccio at, I believe, CGA. But right now, what I'm telling people is, if you need to get a hold of me, my personal email address that you can contact me at is tammy.nuccio@yahoo.com. And that's for anybody who's on the phone or anybody on the board, any of you guys. You can send me any legislative related questions there. And my cell phone is pretty widely out there. Everybody seems to have it these days. So if you want to call me or text me or message me, any which way you need to get a hold of me, please do. And don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I'm going to jump off because Kurt is here. So thank you guys, and have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Now I feel bad for not moving her up. We'll move on to the committee and liaison reports. Let's see, I'll start with Tony on policy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, the policy committee met earlier this evening. We reviewed the 2021-2022 school calendar, which I think will be coming the board's way relatively soon. We also took this opportunity to just review the direction that the committee kind of looks at going to, and to show Madhu kind of where our resources are and how that prioritization happens. We then brought up, we've got a number of policies that we've reviewed before, but have been tabled for various reasons, different information that we need and stuff. We reviewed those 3010 and 9160, and then closed with beginning the discussion on 4120, which is notice regarding electronic monitoring. And that will continue into the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophia, do you want to do communications?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the Communications Committee met earlier this evening also, and we began by looking at the previous Communication Committee meeting minutes to assess what was being worked on in the past. Dr. Willett stated that he will be presenting the district's communications plan at the Communications Committee meeting at the meeting after next. We also began working on setting our goals. And we will be looking at the policy on communications and making communications more efficient. And we decided to set one goal of bringing the public into the communications committee by hosting workshops that are open to the public. We also discussed inviting a liaison from our PTOs to our communication committee meetings. And lastly, we organized sending a member from the communications committee to the town council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana, is there an update on Birch Grove?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, sorry. Yes, we actually had a meeting last night that would challenge the length of our long Board of Ed meetings that we have on the time. We had a very lengthy list of change orders that we went through, some wall tiles in the bathroom, some different, we had some credits, the loading dock stairs, there was a safety issue that they came upon. We're also, as there's some, the bollard loading dock stairs, there was some dry erase paint trim discussions and changes. There were a few credits in there as well, as I stated. One of the big conversations was, why are we getting change orders, or why are we having so many change orders? And honestly, Antonetta has advised us that we actually are going to get the award for the least amount of change orders so far to date for a project of this magnitude and for the state. So we went through all of those. It was very time consuming, but yet thorough. Pete Saba and Dr. Willett were on that. Excuse me, guys, please go in the other room. Thank you. Dr. Willett and Pete Saba talked about the need for some of these changes, because as we're going through the design process and the building process, there are things that we're finding that can make a more effective, efficient learning environment and a safe environment for our school. As when these plans were put together in a very quick amount of time I want to say an expedited time in the very beginning when we put this, when the GMP came to fruition, simply because it was an emergency situation for the school and the funding of the state, that we are now, when we're hitting these different things in the construction plan, we're finding more efficient, effective ways to impact our school in a positive way. And to circle back with some of the stuff that we presented last week, or that Katie presented to last week, I know it was quite a daunting paperwork, and it was a lot of information with pluses and minuses, funds getting taken out of this and funds getting put into that. Some of the things that I did partner with the Katie and the team and Antonetta and JCJ and D'Amato to kind of find out exactly what the process is and what the role is of the Board of Ed, and how much information or lack thereof we should be providing, and kind of the process. So Birch Grove Committee has the authority for the resolution passed by the town council to authorize or deny the work, or, the change orders and such. That is not something that's under the Board of Education purview. It's under the Building Committee purview. The Building Committee approves or denies respective change orders. Those are then signed off by the town manager, and then the town manager authorizes the contractor to do the respective work. Then the Birch Grove Committee, myself, the liaison, or Katie Murray, brings it to the Board of Ed, and what we're bringing to the Board of Ed at that point in time is for us to be approved to submit it to the town, so that the town can submit for our reimbursement. So basically what we're saying is the committee has approved these change orders, and most of these change orders, by the time it's presented to us as a formal Board of Education, most of that work is either in process or already been executed. So as the Board of Ed, our role is to approve the reimbursement part for the state. If that helps you with that daunting packet that you guys received last week, because it's a lot and I read it all the time. So, but I wanted to get a little bit more clarity, because I know even like Christine talked about, some of it, she was quite taken aback by all that, not wanting to approve something or deny something that she wasn't educated on. And I totally get it. So I wanted to get some of that info. And I don't think it was just Christine that said it. If I had seen that packet, I would have been taken aback as well. So shame on me for not communicating that to you before. However, I am going to go ahead and go over, when I do my liaison reports, some of the high level
and change orders. But we did have quite a lengthy talk about bathroom stalls, which was quite interesting. But nevertheless, the other fun part about Birch Grove last night was they did show us the presentation for the furniture and fixtures and the technology, which was really cool. So if you have an opportunity to take a peek at the packet, it is a public document and the public is welcome to come to these meetings. And you do get to see a virtual tour via blueprints and pictures of the new school. But the furniture, we're getting to the nitty gritty and the fine tuning of the school that makes it a little bit more of a realistic and tangible to see that school coming together. Some of the technology with speakers and the surround sound and what they're doing with the cafeteria and the gymnasium and making it one big room, and it can be utilized for the entire Tolland community. Even going down to the IT for storage of the iPads and such, they've made them for our growing curriculum and Dr. Willett's plan of the one-to-one. So we're able to store those Chromebooks and iPads or whatever it is based on those classes. I don't know how many of you have been in the Birch Grove classrooms now, but those iPads are sitting in a small cradle instead of a box that's not very secure. I get concerned you have these little kids touching these iPads and what have you and falling on the floor, and opportunity with that. So anyways, it was just a phenomenal conversation about technology and furniture and fixtures, if that's what really gets you guys excited. The mock room is almost done. So we've invited the town council and the Board of Ed to come and look at the mock room. So that'll be coming up. So date to come soon. And I'll share that with you guys as soon as I have it.
Thank you, Dana. It's a very upbeat report.
Sorry, and there was a lot of information, and I was trying to say it fast because my kids.
Was great. You had my attention the whole time. Thank you. Rini, did negotiations meet? I know you can't say much.
Since the last meeting.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I was not at the last meeting. How about curriculum, Jacob and Madhu? Either one.
I don't think there was an update since the last week's meeting, but we are meeting sometime soon. And then we'll report then.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Griffin, FFC, did you guys meet since last Wednesday?
No, we have not.
Okay. So I think we are good there. So now we can move on to chairperson's report. I did write up a little something for last week, so I apologize for not being there. But I still would like to share a few thoughts that I had. I'd like to thank everyone for their passion and their engagement, whether people sending in emails or talking during public participation. I know sometimes emotions run high, but we are, as a board, here to listen to everyone, and I thank you all for the engagement. Dr. Willett, I don't know if you had spoke to the race and schooling workshop that you did, but many board members had the opportunity to sit in on that. Sometimes when there are things that are much larger than myself, I like to take away a few pearls. And Dr. Cooper, the speaker, had said, sometimes to just start small. And so that may be just simply reading a book about something you're uncomfortable with, or reaching out to someone you wouldn't normally talk to. So I thought that was a great little bit of advice, even though we do have board policies in place for minority staff recruitment or things handed down from the legislator. I think that if we truly want to make change in this world, we have to listen and ask questions of our staff. Why do they want to come here? Why do they want to stay here? And if there are people that don't want to come here, don't want to work here, what are those reasons? And I think that's how, we can contribute to the betterment of our society. There was also a community budget workshop, and I know the budget is another thing that can be incredibly emotional at times, especially when there are differences of opinion. But I think if we continue to focus as a board on student achievement and needs, I think we can forge ahead in a positive direction, even if we disagree. And I'm so happy to see that our new team has gotten to work right away. And I have to commend Ashley for appointing bipartisan leadership on some of the committees. I've really gotten to know some of our new members. And I just I just think it's critical to the cohesion of the board. So thank you, everyone. A little bit of advice, don't get overwhelmed with the sheer amount of committees and workshops and things you have to attend. If you can't make something, somebody else on the team will have your back and we'll go. So with that, we'll move on to board action. So K1 is the CRF. I will entertain a motion. If Dr. Willett, do you mind pulling that up?
Yep. Let me, there's something in the way here. Let me just move it real quick. There.
Jacob Mari, I move to approve and endorse the Education COVID Relief Fund agreement between the Board of Education and the Tolland Town Council, with the added stipulation that funds earmarked for this purpose would first be presented to and approved by the board.
Greenie Besaw, second.
Is there any discussion? Madhu?
Yeah, I just want to say I still don't see that board approval is going to be necessary. I just wanted that on the record. I just think that I don't think that slowing it down or putting our staff through, an unnecessary burden or us having to, do an emergency meeting, is just necessary. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Tony?
Sorry, I was just looking at the wording there, that funds earmarked for this purpose, and just making sure that it's clear with that we mean we're going to spend this money on and not necessarily just the general fund.
I think what you're doing is you're approving the nature of this, and we write the nature of this into the agreement. I have to go back to the town and we tweak it. So the town council will be looking at it soon, and I think it'll cover what you're looking to cover.
Well, and I guess my point, this is our only chance to really look and vote on this document. So the nature of what we wanted to say there, if it doesn't get interpreted correctly by the council and by that, then we won't have another chance. If our intent is to pass it today.
Well, yeah, whatever the board wants to do, I'm not sure I understand personally, Mr. Holt, what you're thinking with respect to why that's not clear, but definitely can, do whatever the board wants. And I would respect any change that people wanted to make, certainly.
It may just be my read. I'm interested in hearing if everybody's reading that correctly, then I may just be off.
I think the intention is that these funds that are earmarked for COVID relief, as per that agreement, would first be, these items would first be presented to the Board of Ed for approval. That,
Okay. I got you. So, and I think you just said it there. So when we're saying these funds, by that we mean the items that we're going to spend these funds on.
Yeah, I understand. Yes.
That's the clarification I was looking for.
You could say the funds and items earmarked for this purpose, or items and funds, or items earmarked for this purpose. Items earmarked rather than funds. You could revoke that and then go back and instead of funds, use items, but.
So I guess, Madam Chair, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
So hold on, I can reformulate that real quick. There we go. Let's make this one out.
So you're editing that?
I am editing it, but you'd have to
Rescind
finish
the
out
motion.
this, yeah, and then.
All right, so.
Or you can vote it down and then come back.
Jacob Mari,
All right,
I rescind.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Jacob, but shouldn't we continue our discussion before we rescind anything?
Yes, Dana, you are absolutely correct. Dana.
So I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that we're doing.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your. I saw your hand and then I forgot about it.
No, I don't want us to do double the work, and I want to make sure that we're doing it right. I just want to reiterate what Madhu said. I'm apprehensive with the presented to, yes, approved by the board. I would shy away from that. And my quick question to you, Dr. Willett, and just to confirm, when you've already worked on this with the town, this has already been with you and the town. So, okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood exactly. Okay. That's it. Sorry, Christina, I didn't mean to mess anybody up.
Oh, nope, don't apologize. You were completely correct. All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Should we just do a roll call vote and see if it gets voted down or put in as is? I'm just going to do one. Okay, so Jacob Mari has rescinded his motion.
Mm-hmm.
I will entertain a new motion if Dr. Willett has written it.
That should actually.
Am I on the right one?
Yeah, now it says items. It should say items. Do you see that or no?
Yes.
Yeah. No, but...
Okay.
Are you just entertaining the motion, Christina?
So I entertain the motion. Jacob, will you please make it?
Jacob Maria, I move to approve and endorse the Education COVID Relief Fund agreement between the Board of Education and the Tolland Town Council, with the added stipulation that items earmarked for this purpose would be first presented to and approved by the board.
Rainey Beesaw, second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay, or you may abstain. Dana?
Aye.
Rini?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Madhu?
Aye.
Griffin?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Christina Plord, I'm an aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Now the next point of order is K2, which is the roof. I will entertain the motion that Dr. Willett has presented on the screen. Sophia, do you want to read that one? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I'm sorry. I've got tons of windows on top of this. I apologize. So I make a motion to certify that project number 142-0082RR for the partial roof replacement at the Tolland Middle School is complete.
Rainey Beesaw, second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye, opposed say nay, or you may abstain. Dana?
Aye.
Rini?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Madhu?
Aye.
Griffin?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Christina Plord, I'm an aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. I will also entertain a motion to go past 10 if necessary.
I make a motion to go past 10.
Tony Holt, second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye, opposed say nay, or you may abstain. Dana?
Aye.
Rini?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Madhu?
Aye.
Griffin?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Christina Plord, I'm an aye as well. Motion passes. Okay, now we are on to public participation. If anyone from the public would like to address, please raise your blue hand. And I am going to, you have a 2-minute time limit. Tony will be the timer. And Jeff McCutcheon, I know you've had your hand raised for a while, so please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I was the one who tried to call in before, but for some reason the phone system doesn't work. I would invite the Board of Ed to provide easier links to directly log in to Zoom. I use Zoom all the time. I've never had that much difficulty in getting into a Zoom meeting with a direct link off of a PDF from your agenda. So I would appreciate easier connectivity without passwords, since they're on a public website anyway. I also want to take a moment to thank the Board of Education members who responded to my query sent through the email. It was great to hear back from so many of you so quickly, and I really appreciate the time that you spent to respond to me, including Dr. Willett, who exchanged a couple of emails with me regarding my concerns regarding moving to remote learning. And I think this whole remote learning issue, we have to keep one thing in mind when it comes to why we do remote learning. And we're doing remote learning because we are assuming that the value of the health improvements that our community will see exceeds the damage caused by remote learning for our children. And I don't believe there's any data which suggests that that value judgment is appropriate. Now, if we look at the state of Connecticut as a whole, we look at who's getting infected from a student perspective. There are more remote students being infected with COVID than there are in-person or hybrid students. And I think that is a big concern when we think that there's some kind of marginal benefit to moving to remote. There's not. And while those numbers don't reflect controls for things like urban versus suburban versus exurban living, and there are many other factors involved with who's going remote versus who's in person, it does suggest that being in school is no more or less dangerous than being out in a distance learning modality. And so when we use
30 seconds.
Thank you. When we use allegories like we're in the middle of a storm and we're battening up the hatches, going to remote is like covering your window with tissue paper. It doesn't help us. It's not going to help us. It's not going to make a health impact because no data suggests that it would. And so while we do have a moral imperative to think about the health of our community, we also have a moral imperative to ensure a good quality education, which is hard to do since March, when we've had nearly 100 days of remote learning at a substandard educational outcome because of it. And I think we really have to rethink this kind of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. At this time, is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Oh, Bethany Lesko.
Hi, thank you, Bethany Lesko, 26 Deer Meadow. Thank you, Dr. Willett, for your dedication to protecting our kids and community. Your tireless work to make the hard, difficult decisions you have done has not gone unnoticed by all. Some, yes, but certainly not all. I certainly know you do not make these decisions lightly. I also realize how tough decisions make many people upset and reactionary. There is no best answer, no answer that will make everyone feel okay and be happy. But yet, I urge people to remember, this is a pandemic. It is not over by a long shot. Just because we have vaccines rolling out, or you may not know someone personally affected by it, does it allow us to sit back and resume as normal? No, it's not easy to be positive for going on 10 months in a foreseeable future. It's not easy to change your life and work and reconfigure normalcy. But no one asked for this, and no one is purposely trying to make life harder. This is a matter of saving lives in a continued time of uncertainty. We need to continue to support each other and be kind neighbors, not throw stones and blame. That will not get us anywhere. Stop arguing and let's get through this together versus a battle on top of a battle. With that said, switching my thoughts to remote learning, which has been a topic tonight, and I've stated this over the summer, I would just like to see a more standard process across the board for remote learning. Both my kids, 3rd and 4th grade, probably completed approximately 45 to an hour of school today, and then a special. I then added my own typing training and YouTube workout for them to fill in some gaps. I remain hopeful that full day remote going through January will look more normal, but I do believe there needs to be a standard of work that is given to keep their minds occupied. Again, I thank you for everyone. I thank everyone on this meeting tonight and the board and Dr. Willett for all their work. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate HB.
Hi, everybody. Kate Howard Bender, 103 Goose Lane. First of all, Dr. Willett, thank you for fighting for our kids. I would ask that the Board of Education reacquaint themselves with the pandemic learning plan that Dr. Willett prepared months ago. It articulates every possibility from remote learning to 5-day plan. Educators are not frontline workers, though we seem to be expected to do so. We do not have training or knowledge about virology, and being in school with kids, though we love them, is mentally exhausting with an ever-present sense of dread and an intermittent need to quarantine. It's only when our whole society at the local and national level decides that affordable childcare is a societal priority that we can avoid this particular tension. I ask all elected officials learn the difference between special education and intervention. It is of massive import that you can distinguish between these two educational structures. I don't understand why the Board of Ed would want to inject itself into the process of approving expenditures related to COVID. If the goal is to do everything they can to keep schools open, why wouldn't we want to allow the superintendent to do his job? This is micromanaging, and it could potentially put kids and staff in danger by slowing down the process. This coordinated effort to throw up barriers to the work of the superintendent indicates a lack of trust in our expert in our school district. Oversight is not necessary if he is being transparent, which he is. I also ask the Board of Education, who are in charge of tending our schools, to discontinue the narrative that our kids are falling behind and to reframe it instead. As we all know, this is a global pandemic, and every single student throughout the country, in the world, has missed instruction. It is the board's responsibility to find out what the issues are from the experts in the schools, and then make sure the conditions are possible to meet those academic and social emotional needs. That's the job. Please support our superintendent and support our kids. Thank you. Be well. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Kate. Rebecca Risley.
Hi, thank you. Just wanted to comment real quick, 103 Mountain Spring Road. I just want to say maybe there could be some direction on these meetings that the public could show some politeness and some kindness without the eye rolling and the muted comments going on in the background and the shaking of the heads. It's distracting, it's annoying, it's disrespectful. And maybe if they would like to attend a public meeting, they should act like a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. At this time, is there anyone else? Okay, with that, we will move on to points of information. Does any board member have anything else to say? Dr. Willett, anything else to add to the?
Yeah, I guess I would say this. I understand it's a difficult situation. Obviously, I understand the points Dr. McCutcheon's making. I disagree with him in that having done this for a while now, the state's moved its data points. I mean, if we were strictly going on data and the state has moved around, I guess I could make an extremely strong argument for a number of different things. So I would like to say this concept that data, and data support, I would just be very careful of that. And I can articulate that in a much greater form in person with anybody who would like to do so. But, that can be a red herring depending on how it's used. And frankly, the state's moved its thresholds and done different things. And, I think what we're looking at and what I'm offering you is practicality and logic. I'm giving you structural reasons why with the rules and regulations, not just prevalence is a part, but rules and regulations, logistics, and prevalence. That's why it's much more than our day-to-day operation. And if we want to go data point to data point, I assure you I could provide a large amount that would head in, that would be justifying many courses of action. But bottom line is I'm a believer in in-person learning. I'm asking this community for these 12 or 10 days so that we can keep us open and keep our kids safe and keep the prevalence in our district low. We can do that. We can stay open. We can do more in-person learning if we do it. And that's why, I'm making this assertion right now. We need to get through this period of time. And I feel that we can re-engage in the in-person learning that we've been doing. And we've been doing more than some other districts. So I think it's just an important period of time to be very careful about. And once we get through it, we'll be able to continue what we've been doing.
Thank you, Dr. Willett. Jacob.
Thank you. A few quick things. One, in relation to Mr. McCutcheon's comments, I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend that part of the meeting where we discussed this in more detail. I might need to follow up with Dr. Willett offline just to get some of the details. I'll definitely be reading the minutes on that discussion. I do share some of his concerns, though. I do believe that in-person learning is very important and is best for the kids. And hopefully Dr. Willett's plan is ultimately an investment that gets us more time in school rather than out of it. As for some comments made about board approval for the fund, this isn't an indictment against Dr. Willett. It's my strong belief that the power of the purse ultimately belongs in the hands of the public. And that doesn't really matter who happens to be sitting up in Dr. Willett's chair. It's something I'm going to insist upon. I think that's best practice. There are some agreements, reasonable agreements against that, but that is my belief, and it's definitely reasonable. And finally, on a fun note, I just want to wish all of our students and staff a nice snow day tomorrow. Please stay safe out there.
Thank you, Jacob. Christine Griffin.
I just also wanted to comment just as far as the COVID relief fund. And, I don't think anybody's questioning what Dr. Willett is spending money on as far as COVID expenses. And we've had a lot of discussions in FFC as far as the nature of these expenses and what we think could come in and out of this COVID relief fund. So in essence, this also just brings it to the attention of the entire board, which I know is something that the public has commented on, about making sure that everything is transparent and what we do in committee meetings is brought to the whole board. And that's really all we're trying to do here as well. And, having Dr. Willett go through those expenses and something that the board approves, in my opinion, just, falls within our usual responsibilities. So I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Tony.
I guess I just want to throw my, my 2 cents in on that, I firmly believe our intentions are to show and to act that the Board of Education and our superintendent and Dr. Willett are a team. Our goals are aligned, our purpose is aligned. And so when we're looking at things like this approval and this oversight, it's not from a purpose of trying to police anything or ensure that it's not being, that everything's above board. I firmly believe it is. It's more from the purpose of ensuring that the board is doing what its responsibility is to make Dr. Willett's path easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody else? So with that, I'd like to just say happy holidays, everyone. And to address the, some of the comments that were just made. I think we've had a fruitful discussion tonight that was, involved civil discourse, and we did reach some board consensus. So very proud of that tonight. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Jacob Mari, I move that we adjourn the December 16th regular Board of Education meeting at 10:05 p.m.
Rini
Nugent, second.
Oh.
Either or.
Yep.
Same goal accomplished.
Any discussion? All right. All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. You may abstain. Dana.
Aye.
Rini.
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Madhu.
Aye.
Griffin.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Sophia.
Aye.
Myself, Christina Plord, is an aye as well. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.